Welcome to the fifth episode of Drams and Dragons, the podcast about the fantasy genre and whiskey and probably a few other things along the way. My name is Gus Berger, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Dustin Van Horn. How are you, man?
Hey Gus, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Doing all right. Doing all right.
Yeah,
Recovering from COVID slowly.
yeah, yeah.
Getting there. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
I think I caught
tonight,
what.
oh
Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
Sorry. No, no.
No, I think I'm catching. It went to the other coast here. I'm
Oh
not, I'm
no.
not feeling too good this week. So,
Oh no.
but yeah,
Sorry to
I'm
hear
excited
that.
about the book today, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we mentioned in the first episode, it had been a long time since I'd read the series, and I have a whole different take on it this time. So
Yeah.
excited
So,
to chat about it.
yeah, absolutely. Same here. So, to introduce the book that we're reading or that we've read, the book that we're discussing tonight, we are going to be doing book two of the first Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. The book is called Before They Are Hanged. And before we discuss the book, I'm going to have a little bit of whiskey just to taste with to pair, to match with the pages we've read, the pages we're going to be talking about. I guess you're not, but what I decided to pair with this book is the Port Charlotte heavily peated Isla single malt, 10 years.
Oh gosh, you had me at heavily peated. Oh,
Yeah. The the distillery is the Bruichladdich
ooh,
distillery
those
on Isla.
pronunciations. Wow.
Yeah. I this one is 50% alcohol by volume, so pretty solid. It's no chill filter, no color added, all that stuff. Let me
Hmm.
pour a little bit. I have tasted this, but that was like weeks ago when I first bought the bottle. I bought it
Hmm.
to replace my Ardbeg that I finished off because I wanted to try something a little different. I'm a really big fan of Iowa whiskeys, and I had never tried this one before. So here we go. I'm just going to do a little pour because I'm recovering.
It's good to
Reco-
model responsible drinking.
just a little bit of
Yes.
restraint, you know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, yeah.
Just a little bit of restraint. So this is a fairly, like I said, they don't add color to this. So it's a fairly light colored dram. You can see it's sort of straw colored. It's 10 years. So it's not like it didn't age a lot, but they believe in, not adulterating and not sort of tricking the drinker into thinking they're getting something they're not. This is very light. It's one of the lighter scotches I've had in terms of color. Interestingly, I don't think that it actually says on the bottle what it was aged in other than oak casks.
So I'm hanging out on the website here. Yeah, let's see. So I'm seeing here they got 65% first fill American whiskey casks, 10% second fill American whiskey casks, and 25% second fill French wine casks. I don't know. Looks like
Okay.
it's the same one.
So let's give this a smell real quick. And again, this is the first whiskey that I have had since COVID. I did lose my sense of smell. It has come back. My sense of smell has actually come back, and in most things, as good as ever. So we'll see about this. We'll see about this. And if it doesn't work and I can't smell Jack, then we will just cut this whole segment and we'll pretend we never drank anything.
Sounds good.
All right. So right away, obviously, it is pretty peated. I don't think that it's not as heavily peated, I would say, on the nose as like Ardbeg or something. I
Hmm.
get more citrus and more I actually get sort of the iodine medicinal quality that you get in like a Lafroig.
Hmm.
I get that quite heavily, along with sort of a herbaceous quality, like almost like thyme or rosemary or something. It's quite complex nose. Yeah, and then I come back and I keep getting that smokiness.
Would you say that it's heavily peated?
I would say that it's more than some things for sure. I mean, I would put it in a heavily peated, the sort of the Isla heavily peated category, but it's more restrained than some things that I've had.
So would you say less than Lafroig? Lafroig to me is always like it's like drinking a campfire almost.
It's a little more restrained, but it's also more complex.
Hmm.
But it's not far behind Lafroig, I would say. Ardbeg for me is like that's the smoke monster, right? Like those are the guys that are, and I know that brew a lot of this distillery also makes like the Octomore, right? Which
Mhm.
is like high end, hundreds of dollars a bottle or whatever,
Yeah.
really smoky, like the smokiest. They market themselves as like the smokiest, you know, um, Scotch out there. But this is their sort of more normal entry level dram, and yeah, it's nice and complex, interesting. Let's taste it. It's quite mellow for a 50%er. Um, Now I'm almost getting vanilla.
Hmm.
I said there's American oak.
Hmm.
Yeah, probably getting some from that. It's got a lot of iodininess, like the iodine and medicinal sort of thing
Hmm.
from Lafroig. It's almost more of that in
Okay.
this. Less smoke, more iodine is how I would say that. And it does have smoke. I'm comparing two whiskeys that are in the same like
Hmm.
category. You know what I mean? It's like you're sort of like
Right.
they're trying to do a very similar thing. They're both succeeding, but they're both sort of putting their own twist on it. Just a little bit more like that vanilla, almost like it reminds me on the of a little bit of bourbon
Hmm.
undertones, like bourbon undertones. But then it's also got that spiciness and herbiness that's really interesting.
It's funny you mentioned the herbs. I was looking through, and part of their description, like part of their shtick, and for those of you who don't know, every whiskey should have a unique profile because of the water they use and the specific part of the island it's from. And this one, they mention specifically the herbal elements.
Mm. Well,
Wild
it comes
thyme
through.
is up on
Ah,
there, and
I said time. I said
you
time.
said it. Look at you,
I did.
the palate's there.
And I had not read their thing, so I'm not primed for this. This is all what I'm getting. Yeah, that time comes through, and I almost would say it's sort of like got an oily mouth feel that kind of brings some of those herbal elements. It has a nice long finish because of the mouth feel.
Hmm.
This one is a very long, complex herbal finish.
Hmm.
It's very nice, very complex. There's a lot going on.
That's usually what I look for in a whiskey. Like, yeah, the stuff that I buy and I want to sip on, it's seems like this has it. It's got some complexity and something your brain can latch onto every time you take a sip.
Yeah, it's very nice. And the sort of last sip that I took, I almost had sort of some savory, like meaty notes.
Ooh,
Yeah,
nice.
especially towards the end, like with whatever's going on with that sort of oily. It's not oily in a bad way. It's sort of like that thick, sort of sticky, like that mouthfeel that sticks, on the back
Hmm.
of your palate. Yeah, really nice.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. I'm jealous. I feel like you've taken me on a flavor journey, Gus.
All right. Well, let's get into the meat of this podcast. Let's talk about the book.
Oh yeah, let's talk.
So, as I said before, the book we're talking about is Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie, and it is the second book in the First Law trilogy. We talked about the first book, um, which is just called uh, The Blade Itself, a few weeks ago. That was like a month ago now, right? Something like
Hmm.
that. We talked about that, and it's a it was a good discussion. It's a good book. I had some complaints about it. We had a great talk about the book.
Hmm.
So yeah, Dustin, I'm curious to hear what you think of the second book. I know second books in trilogies, second movies, second, parts, second acts of stories
Yeah.
can make or break, right, a series. So I'm curious what, as a longtime fan, I'm curious what you think of this. Is it Joe Abercrombie's Two Towers? Is it
Like his Empire
is
Strikes
it
Back.
is it his Empire Strikes Back? You know,
Yeah.
yeah. What do you think?
It reminds me. So I think when we were talking, the main gripe was that the first book didn't feel complete. It didn't feel like a complete arc in it. And I had mentioned that it was almost like an act. Like think of it
Mhm.
like a first act. So the second book does what the first book didn't do too much of. You get some background on characters, you get some lore, you get some character development,
Mhm.
some significant character development,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
right, and then the plot really, really moves. there are adventures that are had, there's slogs, there's a lot of different elements from different genres too. There's a little bit of like Lord of the Rings, like endless quest across hardships, kind of Mordor style.
Yeah, he
You know,
definitely has. I agree there. There a big portion of this book is several of the characters going on essentially this hero's journey kind of thing, right? You know, it picks up where the first book left off, like right where it left off.
mhm,
And you have these major characters, you know, Logan Nine Fingers, Jezzel, um, Pharaoh,
mhm. Baez.
Baez,
And the
and
Navigator, who's kind of a
then
minor guy.
yeah,
Yeah,
then he's a minor guy.
just yeah.
I don't know about the third book, but so far he's a minor guy.
He's mostly a night minor guy.
And then the Apprentice, and there's this little group of characters that all kind of coalesce at the end of the first book, and then in the second book they go on this big journey across the world. You know, there's going to be, and just FYI, everybody, there are going to be spoilers.
Yeah, lots of spoilers.
There's gonna be some spoilers. That's not a spoiler. That's like the setup. That's the beginning of the book. Because you're right. The main complaint that I had about the first book was this lack of a satisfying ending.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that sort of in this book because the hero's journey that this group of characters goes on, and it's not the only storyline that's being told in this book. And there are some big, solid ending pieces for some of these other characters. Like Glocta and Captain West and Dogman and those guys, right? Like there's all huge cast of characters, right? But this group that goes on this hero's journey, they get to the end. It's like the Grimdark ending.
Yeah.
There's going to be a big spoiler here. They get to the end, and the thing they've been seeking is missing.
Yeah.
They're going for this thing, the seed, and they go on this big journey and they get there and it's gone. It's been replaced by a rock. I got a rock, right? Like and I thought it was an interesting subversion of the sort of hero's tale storytelling, the sort of Lord of the Rings journey. You get to the end and you have these expectations about it, and then he just gets a rock.
You get nothing.
I thought that was interesting. You get nothing. Exactly.
Yeah.
You get nothing. Yeah. Good day, sir.
Yes. Yeah, it had me thinking of Willy Wonka style.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, we mentioned that the first time. I think it was hard to kind of get these other books out of my head. You know, I'd mentioned that Abercrombie, he operates by kind of putting tropes on their heads. And how did that hit for you? Like, because I have complicated feelings about the way he did that. I'm curious, like, how you felt about that and
yeah,
the way that, and I think there's three main areas. Like we got Glodka and Dagoska, we've got the North, and then we've got the big hero's quest going out across the world. So at least with that subplot, like how did that hit you?
The journey was great. I thought the character development along the way for all of the main three like chapter characters was great. For Pharaoh, for Logan, for Jezzel, for those three characters, the journey itself was great. You know, journey's not about its destination kind of thing, right? Like,
right.
Baez, I didn't believe his reaction to finding out that it's a rock at the end, that finding out that he's been hoodwinked or whatever, right? Like he's been tricked. I didn't really believe his reaction to it. Like he just sort of accepted it kind of. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like there would have been more, like there was all of this effort expended. And so at the end, he gets there and he's just kind of like, I mean, he's mad, but it's not like he sits there trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
He's just like, he doesn't try to find an alternate solution. He doesn't try to find out, well, maybe it's hidden in a different way. Like they don't spend like a year there trying to figure out what went wrong. He's just like, well, it's a rock. I got tricked. And he moves on. And I didn't like that, actually. I really didn't like that. I didn't mind that it's a rock. I like sometimes when, like, you know, Anton Chekhov's like gun thing. Like I don't mind if the gun sometimes doesn't go off.
Yeah. Right.
I don't mind if like somebody turns a trope on its head. I thought it was Baez in particular, his reaction to it, I didn't care for. And when you read that, that's actually a very important, like it's not a small piece of this, you know, twist. And it's not a small piece of like the story of the characters. Like that's how he reacts to it, in my opinion, is like makes or breaks it.
Yeah.
To me. And so I didn't like how that was done.
Well, because it was his quest.
Exactly.
and it was this big mysterious thing. You don't really even know what the seed is. You get kind of hints. You know that it's incredibly powerful and dangerous and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
I
And I'm
yeah.
even willing to overlook that like Pharaoh would accept that, would accept not knowing, right? What it
hmm
is. Like I'm even willing to overlook some of that because some of these the characters, I'm like, I don't really quite believe that they would accept going on this quest without fully knowing what's going on there. So
Right.
I have some complaints. I have some, there's still some things. I don't think he's a perfect author or perfect writer. Maybe third book will come along and I'll be like, oh yeah, no, never mind. Oh, there was a
Well,
reason for everything.
I think there's
Or
some
maybe not.
retconning that kind of goes on a little bit in the third book.
Okay.
It, well, and to
We'll get there. I'll get
yeah, and
there.
we'll get
But
there. And not in a terrible way. I agree with you because so each of the characters had motivations for going. Giselle kind of got dragged into it.
yeah.
And that stuff comes into play later.
Mhm.
Bias's plans for him. Logan didn't want to know. He was tired of making decisions.
Logan, I agree with
And
totally.
then
Like
what? And the
I have
Pharaoh
no
it was
question.
revenge, right?
Pharaoh is the one where I think by the time they got there, she would have demanded.
Yeah.
She would have stopped in her tracks and been like, "You need me more than I need you,"
hmm
because
And he flirts
he
with that,
does.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
but I just feel like there would have been a moment before they got there where it would have been revealed to the reader.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like it would have, whatever it is would have been revealed to the reader simply because I think Pharaoh would have put her feet down and said, I'm not walking another fucking
Yeah.
step without knowing
Yeah.
what this thing is. What are we really after? And I think Logan, I totally agree. He doesn't want to know. And it's said in book 1, he doesn't want to know.
Yeah.
And it's consistent with his character. Jezzel, I kind of see like, okay, he's manipulated into it. He's kind of okay. I can see kind of hand wave it a little bit. I think he'd want to know, but I could.
Yeah, it's what you can explain away versus I guess that's my biggest beef with it. It's a great segue into that. There's a little bit looks like it's a mean-spiritedness, I think, because so the big reveal happens, and up to the moment, everything makes sense as far as the book is concerned with like characters, their growth, their motivation. You're like, okay, this is all worth something. And even at the end, so Logan has the ability to speak with spirits, right? And he's
Mhm.
speaking with a spirit who has possession of the seed. And the spirit itself is like, oh, yeah, I got this thing. Thank God you're here. Take it.
Yeah,
So it's just kind of a trick that was played on us where it was
yeah,
like, haha, you can't have it. And it felt a little mean spirited to me when I read it this time. I didn't really appreciate the
yeah.
choice of Abercrombie to do that because it kind of just spit in the face of the whole book and all the development that just happened. And for kind of a gotcha at the end, like a M. Night Shyamalan style, like, haha.
You know, we're talking about all sort of our beef or our beefs with this book, but
hmm
I actually want to stop and just say that like the rest of the book is fantastic, and there are sort of 3 big story arcs that are going.
hmm
One of them is Glokta in the city of Dagaska, which is on this other continent, and he's having, it's under siege and he's having to defend the city. He's an inquisitor, so he's having to sort of play politics. He's not, at least in the present time, he's not really a military man, although he was in his backstory
hmm
before he was crippled. And then there's in the north, Dustin, which you alluded to, there's this war going on, and multiple characters are taking part in that conflict. And these stories are told incredibly engagingly. The characters develop, the plots move forward,
hmm
and they each kind of go in a different direction. And in the case of like the war in the North, with you're following that war essentially through the eyes of Captain, or now in this book, Colonel West, and then also through Dogman and his little troop of
hmm
Northerners. That story has some of the meatiest stuff in this book for me,
Yeah.
plot wise, character development wise, and in terms of the ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because compare the ending of that story, right,
hmm
to the end to this ending, or to the ending of the sort of Bayaz hero's journey thing.
And I do want to mention too. So I don't want it to sound like I'm hating on the book because I actually think the part of really enjoying Abercrombie is to see it from the bird's eye view. And what he does with that quest line is I think it's purposeful and it plays into I don't know if you remember from the first book we did. I still have a strong opinion about Baez. Like I don't care for Baez too much. And it's hard
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to keep that in check because I've read the third book. I know what
Yeah.
happens, and everything that happens, it fits into Baez's story very well, and the kind of person he is.
Hmm.
And that's why the book is great, though. That's why the series is great because I think we get everything we were missing with that one story, just like you said, we get with the other ones. Like West goes through his own journey, and by the end, it's like stunning. It's kind of violent, and he gets named Furious, which is cool. He's got a northern nickname.
Hmm.
And I was very satisfied. I had actually forgotten about that scene with the prince.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Oof.
yeah,
That's a great scene though. I
yeah.
mean, that it is a like in terms of the writing, in terms of like the suddenness of everything, it is a
Yes.
great scene. And like the build up to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where like the Prince Ladisla is just
Just,
like he's just like this pompous, arrogant, sheltered.
foppish would be a good, yeah.
Yeah, but not just a fop. I mean, he's a real jackass, right?
Yeah.
Like
To this point, there wasn't like, yeah, it was like buffoonery though, and like always talking about like fashion and going to the balls, and that was what there was like this dark underbelly that we hadn't seen before that, right?
I think there'd been hints. There'd been hints
Little
at it.
hints.
There'd been little
Yeah.
hints at it that he was like maybe worse than that.
Mm.
But then so there's this scene right where it's like, and I don't want to get into everything or spoil everything, but it's just it's a great scene. We'll leave some stuff unsaid, but there's some very very sudden and cathartic moments because it's also kind of another journey, right, for West, where like he's going through all this stuff and it's like this moment where like where his character turns,
Hmm.
and not in a bad way, but like he's just done with the bullshit.
Yep. Yeah, and I know you're a history guy. I got real strong like everything I've read about, especially World War One, British history. I got a lot of that in there. Just like these generals who just treat human lives like nothing, endlessly bickering and like just rivalries, and it's all about honor and sport and things like that. Like that was very satisfying for me too. So seeing that come up against like the brutality and it's like a meritocracy and like a strength-based thing from the Northmen that are just in direct opposition to that.
Yeah, I don't
And
think it's even like you say World War One. I just think it's common to history, right? Like generals, nobility,
mm,
royalty, running armies, these people who are just completely out of their depth, but because of birthright or whatever, they have the power and authority to do these things, and it's just very rare in history that these people are competent. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
obviously the ruler of you say the meritocracy of the Northmen or whatever, like yeah, that's a real thing, where
Hmm.
like this guy, the general of the what's his name,
Bethod. Wait.
Bethad,
The king of the North.
yeah, the king of the Northmen. He's this character who's we don't see him like ever, at least thus far. Like everything we just hear about him, right? We see what he does from the sort of the perspective of the people who are fighting it against him. But yeah, he's this guy who's like risen up to like through sort of his own strength of arms and his own tactical ability and his own prowess as a warrior and a general. He's come up and he's just the difference is stunning, right? And it's
Hmm.
written really well.
Yeah, and I think that's what I really appreciated about that part of the books. The World War One thing pops up for me just because we have so many like first person sources that just talk about that dynamic, and that's what's out there. And it, I just thought it was interesting and it was engaging to see those dynamics playing with each other. And again, it was satisfying. It was satisfying to even just it's you see it a lot in fantasy. It's like the classic where we're in a race against time going across the wilds, and we're not ready for that. There's a scene where all the North basically the prince is given a battalion because he's the prince. Bad things happen, and him
Yeah.
and West and the gang are escaping north with the Northmen, and the Northmen are just going across the rugged terrain like it's nothing. They're hard men, and just all the little dynamics you get um, in thinking about what it means to be tough, what it means to have hardship, what it means to to suffer. These are all things that are explored, and they're going through the characters' heads. And it's just very engaging and fun to read. I think it just scratches that itch, like reading about like war history for me, even though it's in a fantasy setting.
Yeah, I think he did a really good job of portraying the fighting and portraying the battles and portraying all of that in a really grounded way that was sort of grounded in history and sort of in realism. And I got a lot. There were some specific battles in mind. So for example, the final battle where the Flatheads, where these sort of monstrous people, monstrous humanoid
They're like orcs, kind of,
enemies. Yeah, they're kind of like orcs. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're on Bethod's side, and you see the battle essentially from the perspective of Dogman and these orcish. Yeah, they're not orcs, but they're the Flatheads or whatever, charging up repeatedly, and it reminded me of like Gettysburg,
Mm,
right? Like the guys protecting Flat Top the hill on like the far end of the line, and they're just getting like hammered by like wave
yeah.
after wave of charging enemies that are just like hell bent on taking that particular hill. And they're like
Yes.
supposedly this, I mean, it very much had a feel of that sequence in history, or that in that sequence in like the movie. If you ever see the movie Gettysburg, which is a great movie, it felt like that kind of like where they're like, they're losing men, but they're holding the line, and they're trying, they have to be resourceful, and they have to be like brutal, and they have to like countercharge. And like it's
Yeah.
this whole great sequence that I think is really grounded in sort of historical battles,
Hmm.
in a way that I think a lot of fantasy lacks. I think a lot of fantasy lacks that grounding. I think if you want that, usually you have to go to like historical fiction,
Hmm.
right? I would say Bernard Cornwell's a great author for that kind of grounded battle scene.
Hmm.
But this book had that too in a really, really nice way.
And again, this is self-contained alongside the other story, which is
Yeah.
wait, what's that? What's that? Remember the German guys from Big Lebowski when they say, "I believe in nothing." What was the word they used? What they called them? Nihilist. It's like nihilist Lord of the Rings storyline, and then we have
Yeah.
we have the Gettysburg World War I kind of war.
Yeah, well then, I mean, you have another sequence that's kind of like that in Dagasco, but it's like this big siege,
Hmm.
right? Where like Galacta's he's an inquisitor, right? And he's having to go around, and he's been put in charge of the defense of this city, even though he's not a general,
Yeah,
right?
he's been sent there to die, basically. He's been sent there to, yeah.
He's been sent there to see what he can do. And I think after the fact, like the city falls, but he's extracted before it does. And
Hmm.
but he's praised for like having held out for months because they didn't even expect it to last a couple of days, like that.
Yeah,
Um, and it just changed, his efforts changed the whole dynamic. But it's like he thinks he's going to get scolded because he lost the city, right?
yeah,
But the fact of the matter is, they're like, well, you did great. You
yeah.
were
You held out.
awesome. Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun along the way. We had some lovely torture scenes. We had some not sickening. I didn't feel ill, but some very visceral like background. Like we kind of get to
Mhm.
know what kind of torture he went through, and it was pretty awful. We get to know his moral character a little bit. He's got a soft spot for the ladies. He struggles a lot. We got a view into his struggle. We got to meet Casca, which is one of my favorite characters. He's the mercenary
Mm.
captain, and I'm pretty sure he has like he's always itching. He's got like a rash on his neck, and that's one of his things. He's always kind of like drunk, and he's got a rash, and he's like kind of syphilitic.
Yeah.
Um, very lucky fellow, and always goes with the tide and where the money is and stuff. And there's like a nice little subplot, right, where you have all the counselors, and one of them is
Hmm.
the traitor, and so Glatka's got to figure that stuff out. But yeah, for me, that story, completely different character than the other two. I was getting a little bit of like Black Company actually for me, like just kind of
Hmm.
those political kind of, especially when Glatka and Casca would interact with each other. I always love the scenes where they talk with each other. And
Totally agree about the Black Company.
was grim. It was,
It's like one of the granddaddies of the genre.
hmm
You know, the Black Company, for those who don't know, is a long running series that it was from like the 80s, right? Is when it first
yeah,
started
it's old
getting
school.
published.
hmm
It was one of the sort of first, it's not the first, but it's one of the sort of first grimdark fantasy series. It was sort of one of the first successful ones way before Joe Abercrombie hit the scene.
By Glenn Cook, if you're interested in looking
Yeah,
it up.
yes,
Yeah.
Glenn Cook.
hmm
It's really great. There's several series. It's not just like it's like several sub series that all kind of run together that follow this mercenary company, the Black Company, and it is a book that inspired a lot of books that have come after the Malazan series. Took incredible inspiration
Yeah.
from it. I feel like Joe Abercrombie's taken a lot of inspiration from it.
hmm
It's a very influential series. There's this sort of vibe that I get from Glenn Cook, that I get from certain sequences in Malazan, that you get where you've got, it's almost like a colonial, like mercenary.
Yeah. Oh man. You just
Yeah.
read my mind. We didn't rehearse this. You said what I was
Yeah.
I was thinking with it. Yeah, it's the vibe.
Yeah.
Glenn
It's
Cook
that
vibe.
vibe.
Mhm.
It's a very specific vibe. And I really recommend Glenn Cook to more people. I'd
Yeah.
like to do, I don't know, we could talk about this later. I'd like to do sort of, we've been focusing a lot on grimdark fantasy.
hmm
I think it would be pretty cool to do a series on, well, let's call them the fathers of grimdark,
Yeah. The
you
Fathers of
know,
Grimdark.
the fathers of grimdark, you know.
Sounds cool.
uh, we could do like Michael Moorcock, Glenn Cook,
Yeah, man.
there's a few other guys that I'd have to, you know, that I
No,
could
that'd be
think of if
fun.
I had a minute. But yeah, I think it could be really fun. I'm a really big fan, by the way, of both those authors.
Yeah. I haven't read a lot of Moorcock. I have all the Glenn Cook books downstairs on my bookshelf, but
Yeah. Yeah. Both great.
yeah.
Both great. And they're in each very different.
hmm
And this is not a discussion about those guys, but
Yeah, and that's another reason I love the book because he Joe Abercrombie, he still makes it his own. He has that feel, but there are layers of kind of intricacy with conversations and like just everything that comes out of Glotka's mouth. I love Glotka scenes. I
yeah.
love I love when Frost speaks. He's got a lot of great jokes that happen, like a lot of good dark
Yeah.
humor.
He's got a lot of one-liners,
A lot of good,
right?
yes,
A lot of one-liners. He's
good
not real
one-liners.
verbose,
Mm-mm. As far as the series is concerned, one of the most important kind of plot happenings go on in Dagoska.
Mhm.
And I was curious what you thought of that. Because I having read the third book, it's a pretty big, but like when Glodka saves the city, he basically takes out a loan, right?
Yeah.
And it's the first time, I think it's the first time, maybe you could back me up on this, that there's any sort of like before this he was always loyal to not the church but the Inquisition, right?
Yeah.
And this is the first time where he did something kind of outside of his like chain of command type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, he does it, he justifies it because he does this thing. He basically gets in debt to a third party, but he does it. He was something he would normally never do,
hmm
but he does it because he needs to meet impossible obligations,
hmm
right? He's been asked to do the impossible in holding Dagaska. He knows he can't do it. His superiors know, Archlector Salt knows he can't do it. He sends him there on this impossible task. And he's given a lifeline. And he does not take it for his own life.
hmm
He takes it because it can help. He believes
Yep.
to accomplish this impossible task. And obviously it's not enough, right? It's not enough, but it gets him a lot of the way there. It gets him way further than anyone believes is possible, right? The reason he gets back and is praised for having succeeded, even though he did not succeed, even though he lost the city ultimately, the reason he was able to do those things is that he took this loan, right? So I think it's fully within like what his character would do or should do or whatever, right? Like it's totally within his character. It's I don't feel like ever went outside of his character, but it was like he was put in this impossible situation. It was sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right.
But and he knows it. Like when he takes the thing, he knows it. Right? He knows that he's in an impossible situation and that he's being offered this lifeline to maybe live till tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's the thing is it's not something that's going to win and he knows it, but it'll get him till tomorrow. It'll get him a month, maybe 2 months, maybe.
But at what cost, Gus?
Yes. At what cost? Well, we already know by the end of this book, we know there's a cost. Where they call in that favor, right? Right at the end of the book, favor called in. Right. I mean, it's like one of the last things. They're basically like, well,
you're our guy now.
You're our guy. Yep.
And that's something too that's hard to hold back because like there's definitely some good fruition like that comes to fruition, and that decision actually plays out through all of the other books. It's a very long-reaching decision.
All the other books meaning the third book or the entire series?
Pretty much the entire series.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Which is like another 6 books or something like that, right?
Yeah, there's like 3 in the middle, and then there's a trilogy he just finished like a couple years ago. Yeah,
because that's like a low key thing that happens. It's not like
it doesn't seem like a huge deal.
Like, I mean, you kind of know that it is like when he does it, like there's this dilemma that he has, like, do I take it? Do I not take it?
Yeah.
Then you move past it for a while for the rest of the book because it happens fairly early in the book, right? So then you move past it and most of the book happens and you get to the end of the book and they're like, oh yeah, I remember that money we gave you.
Yeah.
We're calling in the favor.
Yep, calling it in. And I think that's why to kind of put a bow on it, that's why I forgive Abercrombie for the long journey quest line, because he does kind of the opposite with this one. There's build up, and he does something that gifted authors are able to do. There's there's 3 words, Valiant and Malt. You've heard them a few times. It's been building up. It's kind of in the background, and there's like real legit payoff for that. And so I know he can do it, and I know he's he's capable of doing these things.
Right? So. It's in the back. The Valiant and Bulk, they're a bank.
Yeah, like who are these?
Right? And they're and it's like it doesn't seem like it's that big a piece of information, except that like in the first book, right? There's like hints of it. Right? There's like hints about them. By the end of the first book, you kind of know who they are. They've been talked about a few times. They've been linked to some nefarious plots. Right? Like they've been linked to some things, right? Like you know who they are. And so then when they show up at the beginning of the second book with this lifeline, you're like, oh, those guys seem shady. Yeah. But he's got to take it. And then by the end of the book, you're like, oh God, now you're wrapped around their finger, right? Like that's oh man. And you care because Glock is probably like the most sort of, again, despite being a tortury kind of inquisitor, he's still
you root for him, man.
You're rooting for him. He's one of the most sympathetic characters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he really is, especially because he doesn't feel like he believes it, but he's been through so much suffering and so much pain, and it's like but I would say, Gus, if anyone is still not sure how we feel about it, I give the book a resounding please read it. It's a great book.
Yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up as well. I think it's a good book. I like the payoff better in this one than the first one, and I think there are a lot of things from the first one that help this book pay off. And if he does the third one like he does the second one, like, and it just takes it a step further in terms of the payoff, like it'll be awesome. There's a lot to like here.
And I do just want to encourage people that, because I remember feeling this way when I first read it, a decade ago. Especially about the hero's journey part. I would like to encourage, if anybody else has felt that way, like it's worth it. There's payoff. All
right.
Yeah, you got to get through that third act in the third book. Then it all comes together. But
well, good, because I am enjoying most of it. I'm enjoying a ton. So
cool.
Yeah, and I keep turning pages to get to those Glockta chapters.
Yeah, they're so good.
And honestly, the Dogman and West chapters as well. I really like those characters.
They're all good. Yeah. Care about them.
Yeah.
Even
That
old
was very
Giselle, you know,
sad. Yeah.
it's all scarred down. You're like, oh, look
Yeah.
at you growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of character development. Yeah. I think that's character development's one of Joe Abercrombie's great strengths.
Yeah.
More so than plot development, more so than prose, even more so than a lot of things. His characters and his character development. I think we talked about this last time as well. Just top notch.
Hmm. Yeah, it's excellent. And
Yeah.
which is wait, I won't say any more. Oh,
All right. Yeah.
read that
No.
third
No.
book. No more
I'm reading
spoilers.
it.
Yeah.
I'm reading it. I'm a couple books in,
Cool,
or a
man.
couple chapters into the third book. So,
Gotcha.
all
Well,
right.
this is a great discussion, man. Thanks for chatting.
Yeah. Likewise. Really enjoyed it, and thank you everybody for listening. Those of you who are still listening, go read this book before they are hanged. Joe Abercrombie. Maybe read the first one first, though. You know, we kind of lost. This is not. Yeah.
It's an official recommendation by Drams and Dragons is to read the
Yeah.
first.
Read the first one first.
Yeah, you should probably. Yeah.
All right.
All
Well,
right,
yeah.
man.
All right. Take care, everyone, and have a good week. And we will see you next week.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.